From the first human civilization to the modern era, alcohol has been enjoyed by countless humans. Spirits were used for medicinal purposes in the 16th century, while the prohibition in 20th century America only increased demand for alcohol. In modern times, alcohol is the catalyst for 28% of traffic-related deaths and is the third leading preventable cause of death in the U.S. From these statistics, we see that alcohol has a profound effect on the human body.
For today's video, we will discuss the biology of addiction. Related topics are central nervous system, neurons, dopamine reward system, and effects of alcohol on the body. For the awaited chemistry of addiction, we will discuss neurotransmitters, as well as the structure and properties of alcohol, and how they relate to the blood-brain barrier and lend to the negative consequences of alcoholism.
The CNS is composed of the brain and spinal cord. The brain works as a receiver, sender, and store of information, with the means of communication as electrical and chemical signals. The spinal cord connects the brain to the rest of the body, thus extending the signals.
Neurotransmitters constitute the chemical signals passed on from one neuron to the next to tell the body what to do. When a neuron needs to fire a signal, neurotransmitters are transported from the axon terminal to the dendrite's receptors. Neurotransmitters travel from the sending neuron channels to the receiving neuron's receptors, traversing the gap between the two neurons, called the synaptic cleft. When a person drinks alcohol, normal neurotransmission is disturbed, making them feel drowsy and disoriented.
Important neurotransmitters include serotonin, C10H12N2O, and dopamine, C8H11NO2. Now we will explain the dopamine reward system. When doing a pleasurable activity, dopamine is released from the ventral tegmental area, the VTA, to the hippocampus, which is responsible for the formation of memories, the amygdala, which controls emotions, the nucleus accumbens, which is the reward center, and the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of planning, judgment, and attention. It is notable to add that drinking alcohol suppresses the prefrontal cortex's functioning, which makes drunk people do stupid things. Anyways, the reward system of dopamine transport makes a pleasurable stimuli, like food, drugs, or sex, more desirable, making it more likely that the person wants to pursue that pleasurable thing again.
The mesolimbic pathway is integral in the reward system, as it demonstrates how the dopamine is received by different parts of the brain. As dopamine level goes up, serotonin, partially responsible for feelings of satiation, goes down. As alcohol binds to the receptors of acetylcholine and serotonin, the pathway of the neurotransmitters is altered. Therefore, after chronic alcohol use, more alcohol is required to achieve the same euphoria as before.
Ethanol is the main alcohol compound found in traditional alcohol, with a chemical makeup of C2H5OH. Ethanol is an amphipathic compound with a polar and nonpolar character. As carbon chains have no separation of charges between the carbon atoms, carbon chains are generally nonpolar. However, the carbon chain in ethanol is short enough that the polar OH group dominates, giving ethanol its polar properties. Therefore, ethanol, which has a polar end and will subsequently dissolve in a polar solvent such as water, is hydrophilic. Ethanol's soluble nature and small size allows it to pass through biological membranes easily. Once alcohol is consumed and enters the stomach, it is absorbed by the bloodstream. There, it passes through the epithelial cells lining the gut and the endothelial cells forming the capillaries, while traveling in the direction of the concentration gradient. Once alcohol enters the capillaries, it enters the veins and travels throughout the entire circulation. As alcohol circulates through the bloodstream and into cells of different organs, it encounters the blood-brain barrier.
The blood-brain barrier is a selective semi-permeable membrane surrounding capillaries near the brain. Basically, it filters in the good stuff, such as oxygen, water, glucose, amino acids, and life-supporting hormones, and keeps away the bad stuff like bacteria and large or hydrophilic molecules out of the brain. However, the barrier is not foolproof, so molecules like alcohol quickly penetrate the brain. Lipid-soluble molecules, small polar molecules, and hydrophobic molecules can pass through the barrier, which has a lipid bilayer. Fatty acids of the membrane are primarily nonpolar, except for the OH part. Alcohol is also primarily nonpolar, except for its attached OH. Therefore, since like dissolves like, nonpolar fatty solvent and nonpolar alcohol solute, alcohol is capable of passing through the barrier quite easily. Now, Mr. Alcohol will demonstrate his journey through the blood-brain barrier to suppress proper functioning in the brain.
Ethanol in circulation will reach all tissues in the body, causing intoxication. From the gastrointestinal tract, the ethanol travels to the liver, where it undergoes metabolism. The oxidation of ethanol to acetaldehyde in the liver is catalyzed by alcohol dehydrogenase, losing some electrons in the form of H atoms. The acetaldehyde is further metabolized to acetic acid, which is converted to CO2 and water in the mitochondria.
Alcohol. Drink it, then you'll get drunk. Your brain will be in a funk. It inhibits the CNS. Don't drink and drive, God bless. Hey! Dopamine, 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 dopamine. Dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Starts from axon terminal. Dendrite receptor gets it all. Polar and non-polar. Through the blood-brain barrier. Metabolizes in the liver. Dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. We focus on alcohol now. The brain has nerves, let's take a bow. Alcohol inhibits and binds serotonin and acetylcholine. Makes you feel like you want it more than you wanted ever before. Let's talk about the neurons. Alcohol's got those H bonds, but it's got non-polar on one side. Blood-brain barrier, let it slide.
Soluble, antipathic, alcohol's good games.
Gets past those fatty acid chains. Now the liver's like, kill me. Enzymes break it down on 3. Acetaldehyde to acetate, almost free. Then it leaves the body through pee. Ethanol, 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 ethanol. Drink it, then you'll get drunk. Your brain will be in a funk. It inhibits the CNS. Don't drink and drive, God bless. Dopamine, 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 dopamine. Dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Starts from axon terminal. Dendrite receptor gets it all. Polar and non-polar. Through the blood-brain barrier. Metabolizes in the liver. Dopamine, dopamine, dopamine.